The millionaire humiliated her cruelly in front of everyone. Pregnant, dirty, and humiliated, she lowered her head. For now. But on the wedding night, a shocking secret explodes, and what was disdain turns into the most explosive scandal of the year. The thick fog embraced the Montgomery mansion like a silent cloak when Helen arrived, carrying not only a small suitcase, but also 6 months of a pregnancy she tried in vain to hide under a loose coat. The taxi left her in front of the massive iron gates, and she observed hesitantly the imposing structure that rose at the top of the hill. The stone walls, stained by time, seemed to hold stories that whispered through the misty windows. As she climbed the stone steps toward the main entrance, Helen felt the weight of gazes following her through the windows. Her heart beat in an uncertain rhythm, mingling anxiety and determination. The job opportunity as a nanny had emerged unexpectedly through a newspaper ad that seemed to have been written especially for her. Nanny urgently needed. Experience with special children, housing included. The heavy door opened before she could even ring the bell. An elderly woman wearing an impeccable housekeeper's uniform received her with a look that Helen couldn't decipher. There was something familiar in those brown eyes, something that made her stomach turn. "Miss Helen Sullivan?" The housekeeper's voice was soft, almost maternal. "I'm Martha, the housekeeper. Mr. August Montgomery awaits you in his office." Helen followed Martha through corridors decorated with old portraits, each step echoing on the noble hardwood floor. The smell of wax and old books permeated the air, mixing with something deeper, an essence she couldn't identify, but that seemed to call to her. The office was an imposing room with shelves that went from floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes. Behind a massive mahogany desk sat August Montgomery, a middle-aged man, perfectly combed grey hair and eyes as cold as a winter morning. "So you're the candidate." It wasn't a question. His eyes scanned Helen's figure with barely disguised contempt lingering on her belly. "I wasn't informed about your condition." "My pregnancy won't interfere with my duties, sir," Helen responded, keeping her voice firm despite the tremor that threatened to betray her. "That remains to be seen." He stood up, walking to the window. "Sophie, my niece, is a peculiar child. She doesn't speak. She communicates only through drawings. I need someone who knows how to handle this without creating additional problems." Helen felt an inexplicable pang upon hearing the child's name. "I have experience with special children, sir, and I believe art can be a powerful form of communication." August turned abruptly, his eyes narrowing. "I don't need theories about art and communication. I need discipline and order. Sophie has a disturbing imagination. Her drawings need to be controlled, not encouraged." Before Helen could respond, the office door opened silently. A girl of approximately 8 years entered, her large dark eyes fixed on Helen. In her hands, a drawing pad was clutched to her chest like a shield. "Sophie!" August's voice cut through the air. "I've told you not to enter without knocking." The girl didn't move, her eyes still locked on Helen. Then, slowly, she extended her drawing pad toward her. On the open page was a pencil drawing, a pregnant woman in front of an old mansion, and beside her a shadowy figure watching her through a window. Helen felt the air leave her lungs. The drawing was of her arriving at the mansion that very morning, but there was something more in that image, something that made her heart race. In the sky drawn by Sophie, a lonely star shone exactly above the spot where, under her blouse, Helen carried a birthmark in the shape of a star. The room designated to Helen was on the 3rd floor of the mansion, an area that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The walls, covered with faded moss-green wallpaper, contained moisture stains that formed mysterious patterns. The ancient bed creaked with every movement, and a dressing table with a stained mirror completed the environment that would be her new home. On that first night, while unpacking her modest luggage, Helen couldn't get Sophie's drawing out of her head. How could the girl have portrayed her so precisely before her arrival, and that star in the sky? The coincidence was too disturbing to be ignored. A soft sound of footsteps in the corridor caught her attention. Through the crack under the door, she saw a shadow briefly pause and then move on. Driven by inexplicable curiosity, Helen opened the door silently and saw Sophie walking toward the end of the corridor, her drawing pad firmly secured in her hands. Following the girl discreetly, Helen saw her enter what appeared to be an old music room. Instruments covered by white sheets created ghostly silhouettes in the moonlight that entered through tall windows. Sophie sat on a dusty bench and began drawing frantically. Helen approached carefully so as not to startle her. On the paper, quick and precise lines formed the image of a man. He was sitting in a dark place surrounded by dense shadows, and his eyes seemed to beg for help. In the upper corner of the drawing, Sophie repeatedly traced a star-shaped mark. "That's a very beautiful drawing, Sophie," Helen whispered, making the girl raise her eyes. There was no fear in her gaze, only an intensity that seemed to want to communicate something urgent. Sophie turned the page and began a new drawing. This time, it was the housekeeper Martha, younger, holding a baby. On the baby's neck, clearly visible, was the same star-shaped mark that Helen carried on her own collarbone. A sudden noise in the corridor made both of them start. Sophie quickly closed her pad and ran out, leaving Helen alone with her whirling thoughts. Before she could process what she had seen, Martha's austere figure appeared at the door. "Miss Helen, it's not appropriate to wander around the house at night," the housekeeper said, but her tone wasn't scolding. There was something else in her voice, a note of genuine concern that didn't match her rigid posture. "I'm sorry, Helen hesitated, instinctively touching the mark on her collarbone. For a brief moment, Martha's eyes followed her movement, and a shadow of emotion crossed her face. "There are places in this house that keep secrets better left in the shadows, my dear," Martha said softly. "Not all rooms should be explored, not all doors should be opened yet." Those words, laden with hidden meaning, made Helen shiver. As she followed Martha back to her room, she couldn't help but notice how the housekeeper walked, as if she knew every floorboard that might creak, every shadow that might betray her presence. It was the walk of someone who had spent years guarding secrets. Back in her room, Helen sat on the edge of the bed, her hand unconsciously resting on her belly. The baby moved, as if responding to her agitated thoughts. Sophie's drawings, the star mark, Martha's enigmatic behavior. There were connections there, invisible but palpable, like threads of an intricate web that she was just beginning to perceive. Dawn brought a rigorous routine to the Montgomery mansion. Helen discovered that her days would invariably begin at 6 in the morning, when Martha knocked on her door with 3 precise taps. Breakfast was served punctually at 7, in an immense dining room where silence was broken only by the tinkling of silver cutlery against fine porcelain. Sophie sat at the table like a small statue, her eyes always alert, her hands occasionally drawing invisible patterns on the white linen tablecloth. August, when present, remained absorbed in his newspaper, emanating an aura of disapproval that seemed to weigh on everyone like a dense cloud. That specific morning, while supervising Sophie in her homework, Helen noticed something different in the girl's behavior. Instead of her usual expressive drawings, she repeatedly scribbled the same symbol, an ancient key ornamented with peculiar details. Next to the key, always the same star that seemed to pursue Helen in every corner of the mansion. "What key is that, Sophie?" Helen asked softly, but the girl only pointed in a specific direction: the library. The library was a forbidden room according to August's strict rules. "Ancient books and important documents," he had said in a definitive tone on the first day. "It's no place for a nanny or a child." However, that afternoon, while Sophie was taking her daily nap, Helen found Martha standing in front of the library door, as if she had been waiting for her. The housekeeper held a bunch of old keys, and one of them, Helen noticed with a start, was identical to the one Sophie had drawn. "There are moments when fate pushes us along paths we try to avoid," Martha murmured, her voice laden with hidden meanings. "Perhaps it's time for you to learn some truths, girl." The library revealed itself as a separate universe within the mansion. Shelves that reached the ceiling housed thousands of volumes, some so old that their spines barely preserved the titles. The smell of aged paper and leather mingled with that of old wood, creating an almost sacred atmosphere. Martha guided Helen to a specific section where a collection of old diaries rested on a lower shelf. With trembling hands, the housekeeper removed a specific volume, bound in faded red leather. "This diary belonged to Clara Montgomery," Martha explained, her voice barely a whisper. "She was different, too sensitive for the family's taste. She started asking inconvenient questions about certain traditions, about the star mark that some heirs carried." Helen felt her heart accelerate. Clara Montgomery. The name reverberated in her mind like a distant bell, awakening memories she didn't know she possessed. "Read," Martha instructed, opening the diary to a specific page. "But be careful. Knowledge is power, and in this house, power has always had a high price." The inky, yellowed pages revealed an elegant handwriting, though trembling in some stretches. Helen began to read, and each word seemed like a piece of a puzzle she didn't know she was assembling. "Today I discovered the truth about the star mark. It's not just a caprice of nature, as they always made us believe. It's a sign, a mark of the true heirs. Those who carry it have a special gift. They can see beyond appearances, feel what others don't feel. But this gift has been used against us. Some family members fear this power, fear what it represents. And now, pregnant and marked by the same sign, I fear for my baby's future." Helen interrupted her reading, her hand instinctively touching her own mark on her collarbone. Beside her, Martha remained silent, but her eyes glistened with contained tears. The remainder of that afternoon passed in a state of numbness for Helen. The words from Clara Montgomery's diary echoed in her mind, mixing with the images from Sophie's drawings and Martha's enigmatic looks. There was a connection there, a greater truth that was beginning to take shape in the shadows of the mansion. During dinner, Helen observed August with new eyes. The family patriarch cut his meat with surgical precision, each movement calculated and controlled. Occasionally, his gaze wandered around the table, lingering for fractions of a second on specific places. The empty seat to his right, a portrait. On the wall, the drawing pad that Sophie always kept nearby. "Sophie, put that pad away during meals," he ordered dryly. The girl clutched the notebook to her chest, her pleading eyes meeting Helen's. "Perhaps she feels safer with it," Helen ventured, surprising herself with her own audacity. August's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Safety," he said, the word dripping with sarcasm, "doesn't come from childish scribbles. It comes from order, discipline, maintaining family traditions." At that moment, a distant thunder shook the mansion's windows. Sophie started, dropping her glass of water. The liquid spread across the white tablecloth, forming a stain that curiously resembled the silhouette of a star. "Clumsy like her mother," August muttered, but there was something in his voice. Fear? That caught Helen's attention. Later, while helping Sophie prepare for bed, Helen noticed something new in the girl's drawing pad. It was a detailed portrait of a young man, his soft features very different from August's. The man smiled, and on his neck, clearly visible, was the star mark. "Is this your father?" Helen asked softly. Sophie nodded, turning the page to reveal another drawing. The same man, but now in a dark place, surrounded by shadows that seemed to suffocate him. A noise in the corridor made Helen turn quickly. Martha was standing at the door, her face a mask of concern. "Miss Helen," the housekeeper said, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to show you something. Something that might explain many things." After making sure Sophie was asleep, Helen followed Martha to a small room at the end of the corridor. It was a simple, almost austere room, but on the walls were dozens of old photographs. Martha lit a lamp, and in the yellowish light the images came to life. "This one," she said, pointing to a particular photograph, "is Clara Montgomery with her newborn son. Notice the mark on his neck." Helen moved closer, her heart beating erratically. In the time-yellowed photo, a young woman held a baby. On the child's neck, clear as day, was the star mark. "And this one," Martha continued, her voice now just a whisper, "was taken 18 years later." The second photograph showed the same baby, now a young man identical to the one in Sophie's drawings. Beside him, a pregnant woman smiled at the camera. Helen felt her legs weaken. The woman was the spitting image of herself. "Your mother," Martha confirmed, tears now flowing freely down her wrinkled face. And that is Michael Montgomery, the true heir of this house. The man August made everyone believe had abandoned the family. The man Sophie desperately tries to show us through her drawings. Sleep abandoned Helen that night. Martha's revelations had opened a door that could no longer be closed. Her hands absent-mindedly caressed her belly, while her mind tried to process the magnitude of what she had discovered. She was the daughter of Michael Montgomery, the true heir of the mansion, and Sophie, the silent girl who communicated through drawings, was her niece. A creak in the floorboard awakened her from her thoughts. Through the crack in the door, she saw a shadow moving in the corridor. It was Sophie, again wandering through the mansion during the night. This time, however, the girl carried something besides her inseparable drawing pad, a small flashlight that cast a trembling beam of light in front of her. Helen followed her careful steps on the old floorboards. Sophie descended the main stairs, crossed the entrance hall and stopped in front of a door Helen had never noticed before, partially hidden by a heavy tapestry. The girl looked back as if she knew she was being followed and made a gesture calling Helen. The door revealed a narrow staircase that descended in a spiral. The air was heavy with the smell of mold and antiquity. Sophie descended the steps with the familiarity of someone who knew the way well, her flashlight illuminating strange marks on the walls, ancient symbols among which Helen recognized the same star she carried on her collarbone. At the bottom of the staircase, they found a circular room, its walls covered by dusty shelves. Sophie headed to a specific corner and began removing books from a shelf, revealing a small opening in the wall. From within, she retrieved an object wrapped in black velvet. With trembling fingers, the girl unwrapped it, revealing an ancient music box. When she opened it, a soft, melancholic melody filled the environment. Helen recognized the music. It was a lullaby she had always known, without knowing how or why. "It was your mother's," a voice emerged from the shadows, making both of them start. Martha emerged from a dark corner, her eyes shining with contained tears. "Clara used to play it for Michael every night. Later, Michael played it for your mother when she was pregnant with you, Helen." Sophie took her pad and began drawing frantically. The drawing showed the circular room, but with a crucial difference. One of the bookcases was slightly displaced, revealing a secret passage. "Sophie discovered this months ago," Martha explained, moving to the indicated bookcase. "She has the gift, like all who carry the mark. She can see what others don't see, feel what others don't feel." With a joint effort, they managed to move the bookcase. Behind it, a narrow passage extended into darkness. The air that came from there carried a familiar smell, the same that Helen had felt on her first day at the mansion. "Your father is alive, Helen," Martha whispered, her voice trembling. "August keeps him prisoner somewhere in this mansion. Sophie sees him in her dreams, and that's what she's trying to show us through her drawings. But we need concrete evidence before we can act. August has powerful allies, and a wrong move could cost everything." Helen felt her baby move, as if responding to the tension of the moment. Sophie approached, and for the first time since Helen had arrived at the mansion, the girl touched her belly. Her eyes filled with tears, and in a surprising gesture, she opened her mouth as if she wanted to speak. At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed on the upper floor. Sophie quickly gathered her drawings, while Martha repositioned the bookcase with surprising agility for her age. "Tomorrow," Martha whispered as they hurriedly climbed the stairs. "Tomorrow we'll start gathering evidence. There are more hidden diaries, documents that Clara left, people who know the truth but are afraid to speak. And most importantly, there's you, Helen. You are living proof that Michael didn't abandon the family as August made everyone believe." The next morning brought a subtle change in the atmosphere of the Montgomery mansion. Helen now noticed details that had previously gone unnoticed. The way August avoided certain areas of the house, the elaborate system of locks on seemingly unimportant doors, the anxious glances that the few employees exchanged when they thought no one was watching. During breakfast, a brown envelope arrived for August. Helen noticed how his hands trembled slightly as he opened it, how his face paled as he read its contents. Sophie, who was drawing as always, stopped abruptly and began a new drawing. An elegant woman stepping out of a car, a folder under her arm. 2 hours later, Sophie's drawing came to life. A woman dressed with impeccable elegance arrived at the E.I. mansion, introducing herself as Dr. Beatrice Miller, attorney and old acquaintance of the family. The way August received her, a mixture of forced courtesy and poorly disguised apprehension, did not go unnoticed by Helen. "We need to review some old documents," August announced, his voice tense. "Martha, take Dr. Miller to the library and make sure we're not interrupted." Helen took advantage of the distraction to explore the second floor of the mansion, an area she had thus far avoided by express orders from August. Sophie followed, her silently, her drawing pad always at hand. In a side corridor they found a door ajar that gave access to a small, dusty office. The room seemed to have been abandoned in haste. Scattered papers covered an antique desk, and on the walls, framed photographs told a story that made Helen's heart ache. In one of them, Michael Montgomery smiled alongside a young woman, Helen's mother, in front of the mansion. In another, more recent, baby Sophie was held by her father, the star mark clearly visible on her neck. A noise at the door made Helen turn abruptly. It was Martha, her face a mask of concern. "Dr. Miller," she whispered, closing the door behind her, "is not here by chance. She was a close friend of your mother, Helen, and she has evidence, documents that can prove that the will presented by August is false." Sophie began drawing frantically. On the paper, the image of Dr. Miller talking with August in his library emerged, but there was something more, a hidden camera on a bookshelf recording the scene. "Cameras?" Helen asked, surprised. "Your mother wasn't naive," Martha explained. "She suspected something would happen. She installed cameras at strategic points in the mansion before leaving. Dr. Miller has the recordings." A muffled scream from the library interrupted the conversation. The three ran there, finding August standing, his face red with fury, while Dr. Miller maintained impressive calm, an open folder on the table between them. "This is a farce," August vociferated. "These documents are forgeries." "They are originals, Mr. Montgomery," the lawyer responded serenely, "including Helen's birth certificate, signed by Michael, and the recordings that prove your participation in the falsification of the will." At that moment, August noticed Helen's presence at the door. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time Helen saw fear in that always so controlled face. "You," he muttered, "you're just like her, like all of them, with their marks and their gifts. They think they can see beyond, that they can judge what's best for the family. But I protected this house, protected our reputation." Sophie, who had hidden behind Helen, suddenly stepped forward. Her eyes met August's, and to everyone's amazement, her voice, hoarse from disuse, broke years of silence. "Daddy," she whispered, her first word in years carrying the weight of all the truths her drawings had tried to reveal. The impact of the words spoken by Sophie still reverberated through the library when August staggered backward, leaning on his desk. The mask of authority he had always worn began to crack, revealing underneath a man tormented by his own choices. "You don't understand," he muttered, more to himself than to those present. "No one understands. Michael was too weak to lead the family. His gifts, that damned sensitivity. He wanted to transform the mansion into a cultural center, open the doors to strangers, generations of tradition thrown away." Dr. Beatrice Miller maintained her professional demeanor, though her eyes betrayed deep indignation. "Mr. Montgomery, I have here recordings of your conversations with Mr. Frederick Turner, the lawyer who helped you falsify the will, conversations in which you explicitly admit to forging your brother's signature." Helen felt a wave of dizziness and needed to lean on Martha. The housekeeper supported her firmly, her eyes never leaving August. Sophie approached Helen, holding her hand with surprising strength. "There's more," continued the lawyer, removing more documents from her folder. "Banking records showing suspicious transfers, testimonies from employees who were paid to keep silent and..." She made a dramatic pause. Helen's original birth certificate signed by Michael Montgomery and his wife, with the star mark clearly documented. August laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You think some papers can change anything? I've built a protection network over 15 years. Judges, politicians, businessmen, they all have much to lose if the truth comes out. It was then that Sophie released Helen's hand and walked to her uncle. Without hesitation, she extended her drawing pad. On the open page, a new drawing showed a scene that made August pale. A secret meeting in his office, with important figures in society, all clearly identifiable, discussing what appeared to be a bribery scheme. "The cameras," Martha said softly. "They recorded everything, Mr. August. Every meeting, every obscure agreement, every threat." Dr. Miller nodded. "And copies of all the recordings are already in safe places. Any attempt to obstruct justice now would only worsen your situation." Helen felt her baby moving intensely, as if responding to the tension of the moment. Instinctively, her hand touched the star mark on her collarbone. It was then that a sudden memory hit her, a lullaby, the soft voice of her mother explaining about the mark. "It's a gift, my love, a gift that allows us to see the truth through lies, feel the pain of others as if it were our own." Sophie took her pad again and began drawing with renewed urgency. The drawing that emerged made Helen hold her breath. It was the basement of the mansion, with precise details of its location. And there, in an improvised cell, was Michael Montgomery. "He's alive," Sophie said, her voice still hoarse but stronger now. "Daddy is alive. I see him every night in my dreams. He sings to me the same song he sang when I was a baby." August threw himself into his chair, defeated. "You don't understand. I couldn't allow him to destroy everything our family built. The confinement was necessary to protect our heritage." Dr. Miller stood up, her voice sharp as steel. "Mr. Montgomery, what you did wasn't protecting a heritage. It was kidnapping, fraud, extortion, and a list of other crimes that would take decades to be judged. But now at this moment you have a choice. You can take us to Michael voluntarily, or I can make a call that will place this mansion under federal investigation in a matter of minutes." The group followed August through the corridors of the mansion, descending stairs that Helen had never noticed before, hidden by false panels and old tapestries. The air grew denser with each step, laden with the weight of 15 years of secrets. Sophie led the way, guiding them as if she knew it by heart, even though she had never physically been there. Her drawings had mapped every corridor, every door, every detail of her father's prison. It was as if her art was an extension of her senses, transcending the physical barriers that separated her from him. Martha walked beside Helen, offering silent support. The housekeeper seemed to have aged a decade in the last few hours, the weight of so many years keeping secrets finally taking its toll. Still, there was a renewed strength in her steps, as if each meter they advanced toward the truth rejuvenated her a little. Dr. Miller kept her phone in hand, ready to make the call that would transform the situation into a public scandal if August tried any trick. Her polished professionalism had given way to an iron determination, and her eyes did not leave the patriarch's figure for a second. Finally, they reached a heavy metal door, apparently old, but with a modern lock. August hesitated, his hands trembling as he searched for the key in his pocket. "Don't prolong this any further," the lawyer warned. "Every second of hesitation will be considered in your sentence." When the door finally opened, the air that escaped was heavy with years of confinement. Sophie was the first to enter, her steps light but determined. At the back of the room, illuminated only by a weak lamp, was a man sitting in a simple chair, an open book in his lap. Michael Montgomery raised his eyes, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. 15 years of captivity had not been able to erase the nobility of his countenance, nor the kindness of his gaze. The star mark on his collarbone, identical to Helen's and Sophie's, seemed to shine in the dimness. "Daddy," Sophie whispered again, running into his arms. Michael hugged her tightly, silent tears running down his time-marked face. His eyes met Helen's, and a smile of recognition illuminated his features. "My daughter," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse, "you're identical to your mother." Helen felt her knees weaken. Martha supported her once more, guiding her to the father she had never known. The embrace that followed was awkward, hindered by her pregnant belly, but laden with 15 years of absence and contained love. "I knew you would come," Michael said softly. "Every night I dreamed of this moment. I saw you growing up, saw the star mark, knew that one day our gift would reunite us." August observed the scene from the door, his face a mask of contradictory emotions. I truly believed I was doing the right thing," he murmured. "The family, the traditions—" "The true traditions of our family," Michael interrupted him, his voice surprisingly firm, "were always about protection and sheltering, not about power and control. Our mark is not a curse or a burden, brother. It's a reminder of our responsibility to those who need help." Sophie took her drawing pad and showed the last page to her father. The drawing showed the transformed mansion, open windows, flowering, gardens, children playing, music flowing through the corridors. It was the vision Michael had for the place, the same one August had so feared. The first hours after Michael's rescue were a whirlwind of emotions and practical provisions. A medical team, discreetly summoned by Dr. Miller, performed detailed examinations while he rested in one of the main bedrooms of the mansion. Sophie did not leave her father's side, as if afraid he might disappear again if she looked away. Helen observed the scene from the doorway, her hand resting on her increasingly prominent belly. Martha silently approached, bringing a cup of chamomile tea. "Your grandfather used to say that the Montgomerys marked by the star had a special gift for healing not just bodies, but souls," the housekeeper commented, her soft voice laden with memories. "See how Sophie's presence is already making a difference in Michael's recovery." It was true. Despite the years of confinement, Michael demonstrated surprising strength. His eyes, once opaque from prolonged darkness, began to recover. Their brightness, especially when Sophie showed him her drawings or when Helen approached to talk. "We need to talk about the future," Dr. Miller announced, entering the room with a folder of documents. "There's much to be legally resolved, but first we need to ensure that everyone is protected." August, who had been kept under surveillance in his office, requested a meeting with his brother. After some discussion, he was allowed to enter the room, closely accompanied by the lawyer. The meeting between the brothers was laden with tension and contained emotions. August, stripped of his former arrogance, seemed to have aged decades. In a few hours. "Michael," he began, his voice trembling, "I don't expect forgiveness. What I did has no justification. But I need you to know why. I need you to understand." Michael raised his hand, gently interrupting him. "I understand, August. I always understood. The fear of change, the weight of traditions, the feeling of always being in the shadow of the older brother. Our gift allows us to feel not just the pain of others, but also their deepest fears." Sophie, who was drawing in her pad, suddenly raised her head. Her eyes met her uncle's, and for the second time that day, her voice broke the silence. "You also have the mark," she said, surprising everyone. August paled, his hand instinctively touching a specific point on his back. Michael leaned forward, his eyes widening with understanding. "That's why you fought so hard against this," Michael murmured. "You also felt everything, but refused to accept it. You chose control instead of understanding." It is unbearable," August admitted, tears finally breaking through his facade. "To feel everything all the time, the expectations, the disappointments, the constant judgment. I thought if I kept everything under rigorous control, if I followed the rules to the letter—" Helen approached her uncle, guided by an impulse she couldn't explain. She took his hand and placed it on her belly, exactly at the moment the baby moved. "It's a gift, Uncle August," she said softly, "not a curse. It allows us to feel the pain of others, yes, but also their joy, their hope. It makes us more human, not weaker." Sophie stood up and showed her most recent drawing. It portrayed the mansion, but in a way no one had seen before. The shadows and lights mixed in a complex pattern, and each person present in the room was represented with their own star mark, including August, all shining in harmony. The transformation of the Montgomery mansion began gradually, like an awakening, from a long winter. Windows, long closed, were opened to allow the entry of light and fresh air. The once silent corridors began to echo with voices and footsteps of people who came to learn about the new project that was being born. Michael, still recovering but strengthened by his family's presence, began implementing his original vision for the property. The library, once locked and forbidden, became the beating heart of the mansion. Martha, with her extraordinary memory of years of service, helped organize the historical volumes and important documents. Each book here tells a story beyond its pages, she explained to curious visitors. They're generations of knowledge, of sensitivity, of understanding the world through the special eyes of the Montgomerys. Sophie blossomed in an extraordinary way. Her voice, previously silenced by trauma, gradually returned, though she still preferred to express herself through her drawings. Her works, now displayed in an improvised gallery in the former ballroom, attracted admirers and scholars fascinated by her ability to capture not just images, but emotions and memories. Helen, entering her 8th month of pregnancy, coordinated the transformation of August's former office into a music and art therapy room. Her gift, now fully embraced, helped her understand exactly what each space in the mansion needed to become welcoming and healing. August, to everyone's surprise, did not try to escape his responsibilities. After consultations with Dr. Miller and long conversations with Michael, he decided to use his administrative knowledge and contacts to establish a foundation that would ensure the future of the project. "It's a form of redemption," he explained during a family meeting. "I can't undo the past, but I can help build a better future." One afternoon, while Helen was organizing sheet music in the music room, she felt the first contractions. Sophie, who was nearby drawing as always, immediately noticed the change. Her eyes widened and she ran to call for help. The birth happened right there in the mansion, assisted by an experienced midwife that Martha knew. Michael held his daughter's hand while she brought a new life into the world. To everyone's surprise, it wasn't just one baby, but 2, twins, a boy and a girl. "Look," Sophie whispered, pointing to the newborns. Both carried the star mark, though in different places, the boy on his collarbone like Helen and Michael, the girl on her back like August. "They carry our complete history," Michael observed, emotional. "The visible and the hidden, the light and the shadow, all in balance." Martha, who watched the scene with tears in her eyes, took one of the family's ancient diaries and read aloud a passage that seemed especially significant at that moment. "The gift of the star is not just to see beyond appearances, but to understand that each shadow has its reason for being, each pain, its lesson, each silence, its melody. We are guardians not just of a mansion or a tradition, but of an ancient wisdom. That true healing comes from the balance between what we show and what we hide, between what we say and what we silence." Sophie took her drawing pad and began working on a new piece. This time her stroke was different, lighter, more hopeful. On the paper, the Montgomery mansion emerged transformed, its windows shining with a welcoming light, its gardens in bloom, and above it all, a constellation of stars forming a pattern that resembled the mark they all carried there. The twins, named Clara and Michael in honor of their grandparents, brought renewed energy to the Montgomery mansion. Just a few months old, they already showed extraordinary signs of sensitivity. Clara, with her mark on her back like Uncle August, had a special gift for calming people around her. Michael, meanwhile, seemed to capture melodies from the air itself, his small fingers moving as if playing an invisible piano. The mansion's new routine established itself naturally, as if the house could finally breathe after years of oppression. Mornings began with music. Sophie had discovered a surprising talent for the violin, and her melodies echoed through the corridors, while the first rays of sunlight traversed the now always open windows. Martha, who had initially thought of retiring after the revelations, found a new purpose as guardian of the family memories. Her decades of experience in the mansion made her an incomparable narrator of the Montgomery stories, and she began conducting guided tours for groups interested in learning about the history and social project that was being born there. "Each room in this house," she explained to visitors, "has a story of transformation, where before there were secrets and pain, now hope and healing flourish." Helen, adapting to motherhood with natural grace, coordinated the art therapy program that quickly became a reference in the region. Her heightened sensitivity amplified by the star mark allowed her to identify exactly the type of artistic expression each person needed for their healing process. On a particularly significant afternoon, while the twins slept under Martha's attentive care, Helen found August in the library. He was absorbed in one of the family's ancient diaries, his red eyes betraying recent tears. "I found records of others like us," he said without raising his eyes. "Generations of Montgomerys marked by the star, each dealing with the gift in their own way. Some, like me, tried to suppress it. Others embraced it and did great things." Helen sat beside her uncle, noticing how his hands trembled slightly as he turned the yellowed pages. "It's never too late to choose a new path," she said softly. "Your mother told me something similar once," August responded, a sad smile playing on his lips. "The last time I saw her, before everything went wrong, she had this way of seeing through people, of understanding their deepest pains." Sophie, who had silently entered the library, approached with her drawing pad. She showed August a new work. It was a portrait of him younger, playing with Michael in the mansion's garden. In the drawing, both smiled, and their star marks shone with the same intensity. "You were always part of this story," she said, her voice firmer each day. "You just needed to remember that." Michael, who now walked with the aid of a cane that Sophie had decorated with stars, joined them. "I remember that day," he commented, looking at the drawing. "It was when we discovered we could feel each other's emotions. You were so scared that you hid in the attic for hours. And you found me," August completed, the memory emerging clear as day. "You didn't judge me, didn't force me to come out. You just sat with me in the dark until I was ready." A baby's cry echoed through the mansion, and soon Martha appeared with the twins. Clara calmed as soon as she saw August, extending her small arms in his direction. The great-uncle picked her up carefully, and everyone in the library could feel the wave of serenity that emanated from the little one. As autumn tinted the mansion's gardens with golden and red hues, the Montgomerys' social project began to take more definite shape. Dr. Miller, who had become not just a legal consultant, but also a close friend of the family, helped structure the Morning Star Foundation, officially registered as an institution supporting children and youth with special sensitivities. The first groups began to arrive: children who didn't fit traditional education patterns, young people who felt too much, artists who needed space to expand their gifts. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and secrets, was transforming into a beacon of hope and welcome. Helen discovered that her pregnancy had permanently amplified her sensitivity. Now she could perceive people's emotional needs with almost crystalline clarity. This ability proved invaluable in developing the Foundation's therapeutic programs. "Each person who arrives here," she explained during a meeting with educators interested in the project, "carries their own internal music. Our function is not to impose a melody, but to help them find their own harmony." Sophie, who now divided her time between her regular studies and advanced art classes, began developing a unique technique of therapy through drawing. Her works weren't just illustrations, but portals to emotional understanding. Children who couldn't express their feelings in words found in Sophie's strokes a mirror for their own emotions. On an especially significant morning, as the twins completed their first year of life, an exciting discovery was made in the mansion's attic. Martha, organizing old document boxes, found a set of diaries written by the twins' great-grandmother, the first Montgomery recorded with the star mark. "It's extraordinary," Michael commented, leafing through the pages with reverence. She was already talking about using art as a form of healing, about how increased sensitivity wasn't a weakness, but a gift that allowed building bridges between people. The twins, sitting on the library carpet, seemed to respond to the energy of the ancient diaries. Clara, normally calm, clapped her hands animatedly, while little Michael hummed a melody that no one knew, but that sounded strangely familiar. August, who had taken on the responsibility of documenting the family history for future generations, made meticulous notes. "Our great-grandmother believed that each generation of the marked had a specific role to fulfill," he explained, adjusting his reading glasses. "Some were healers, others teachers, artists, or guardians of knowledge. And what would be the role of this generation? Helen asked, watching her children play with the shadows that the afternoon sun projected through the windows. Sophie, who was drawing as always, raised her pad. The new drawing showed the Montgomery mansion, but from a perspective never before seen. From above, the set of buildings and gardens formed the pattern of a star, and from each point emanated different forms of light: music, art, words, healing, understanding. "We are a bridge," she said simply, "between the past and the future, between pain and healing, between silence and expression." Martha, who observed the scene with her wise eyes, added, "And perhaps that's why the twins were born. Now, two faces of the same star, representing the balance our family has finally found." The first birthday of the twins transformed into a celebration that went far beyond the family aspect. The mansion opened its doors to all the children and families who had been touched by the Morning Star Foundation project during that initial year. The garden, now exuberant and full of life, was decorated with colorful lanterns that Sophie had hand-painted, each telling a different story through her drawings. Clara and Michael, the small heirs of the star mark, seemed to flourish with the presence of so many people. Clara, with her natural gift for calming others, especially attracted the shyer and more anxious children. Little Michael demonstrated an extraordinary connection with music. Whenever someone played an instrument, his eyes would shine and his body would move in perfect sync with the melody. During the party, a special moment captured everyone's attention. One of the children assisted by the foundation, a girl who hadn't spoken for months due to trauma, approached the old piano that had been brought to the garden. Clara, as if sensing the girl's pain, crawled to her and held her hand. At that very moment, little Michael began to hum an unknown melody. Sophie, who was watching the scene, began drawing frantically. In her pad, the image that emerged showed not just the present moment, but also a kind of aura that surrounded the three children, a pattern of interconnected stars that seemed to dance around them. "It's extraordinary," whispered Martha, who had approached to observe the drawing. The ancient family prophecy spoke of a time when the stars would align in a new way, bringing healing through the generations. Helen, who was nursing Michael while watching Clara interact with the traumatized girl, felt a wave of understanding course through her body. "It's not just about us, is it, about the Montgomery family? It's about how our gift can connect with others' pain and transform it into something new." Father Michael, who had progressed remarkably in his recovery, though he still used the carved cane, approached the group. "I remember something my mother used to say. The star mark wasn't given to us to distinguish us from others, but to remind us of our responsibility to everyone." The silent girl, still holding Clara's hand, touched a note on the piano. The sound reverberated through the garden, and something extraordinary happened. Little Michael, in Helen's lap, responded with a perfectly complimentary note, his infant voice reaching an impressive musical purity. August, who had kept himself discreetly apart during most of the party, slowly approached. His presence, once always associated with authority and fear, now carried a different serenity. "For years, I tried to suppress our gift because I feared its power. Now I understand that the true power is in sharing it." Sophie stood up and, for the first time, shared her gift in a new way. Taking a brush and paints that were nearby, she began painting directly in the air, or so it seemed at first glance. In fact, she was using a special technique she had developed, creating images in thin layers of sprayed water that captured the light of the evening. The image that emerged was ethereal and magical. It showed the mansion not as a physical place, but as a field of energy where different gifts intertwined: music, art, healing, understanding, all flowing from a common source, the love and acceptance that now permeated every corner of that space. The success of the twins' birthday party resonated far beyond the walls of the mansion. Soon, the Morning Star Foundation began receiving contacts from institutions all over the country, interested in understanding and replicating its unique approach to healing through arts and sensitivity. Helen, now fully adapted to her role as Director of Therapeutic Programs, developed a methodology that combined the different gifts of the family. Therapy sessions began with Clara, who naturally calmed people with her presence. Then, little Michael contributed with his innate musicality, creating sound atmospheres that helped with emotional expression. Sophie, who had turned 15, assumed a fundamental role as an artistic facilitator. Her drawings were no longer just records of visions and feelings. They had transformed into powerful therapeutic tools. She developed a technique she called star mirror, where she created portraits that revealed not just people's physical appearance, but also their inner lights. Each person carries their own constellation, she explained to new therapists who came to learn at the foundation. Our work is to help them recognize and light their own stars. Martha, though no longer so physically agile, remained as the beating heart of the mansion. Her extraordinary memory and ability to connect old stories with the present made her an invaluable mentor. She began recording her memories, creating a precious collection that melded the Montgomery history with the transformations she had witnessed. I remember the day Helen arrived, she shared during one of these recordings. Pregnant, frightened, but carrying within herself a strength she didn't even know, like a seed that needed only the right soil to flourish. Father Michael, recovered, enough to assume the presidency of the foundation, focused on expanding the project's reach. With Dr. Miller's help, he established partnerships with universities and research centers interested in studying the effects of art and music in the emotional healing process. One afternoon, while supervising a music therapy session, Michael observed something extraordinary. Clara, who was playing with colored blocks in the corner of the room, began organizing them in a pattern that exactly mirrored the musical structure being played. At the same time, her brother Michael, without any formal instruction, sat at the piano and began improvising a melody that perfectly complemented the session. The twins, Helen explained to the researchers documenting the phenomenon, seem to have developed a unique form of synesthesia. Clara sees physical structures in music, while Michael directly translates emotions into melody. August, who had found peace in his new role as family historian, made meticulous notes about the development of the twins' gifts. "It's fascinating," he commented during a family meeting. "Each generation of star-marked Montgomerys manifests the gift in a unique way, but always maintaining the essence, the ability to transform pain into beauty." The mansion, which was once a symbol of oppression and secrets, now pulsed with life and possibilities. The old music rooms, restored and equipped with modern instruments, echoed with healing melodies. The art studios, installed in the former empty rooms, overflowed with colors and creativity. And the library, once locked and forbidden, became a center for research and documentation on the intersections between art, sensitivity, and healing. Winter came to the Montgomery mansion, covering the gardens with a thin layer of frost that transformed everything into crystal. Inside the house, however, the warmth of transformation continued to flourish. The Morning Star Foundation was preparing for its largest expansion yet, the inauguration of a special school that would combine traditional education with artistic and emotional development. Helen, reviewing the final plans in the old office, that now served as an administrative center, felt a different emotion as she watched the twins playing on the carpet near her desk. Clara had developed her own game, where she organized objects in patterns that, according to her, made people feel better. Little Michael, meanwhile, already demonstrated a musical understanding that defied his age, creating melodies that seemed to respond directly to the emotions of people around him. "It's as if they could see through people," commented Sophie, who had just entered the room with her latest project, a mural that would cover one of the main walls of the new school. The drawing showed a tree whose branches transformed into musical staffs and whose leaves were faces, each telling a different story of transformation. Martha, who supervised the organization of the new educational space, had discovered something interesting in the family's old diaries. "There are records of other pairs of twins in the Montgomery lineage," she explained during a family meeting. "Whenever twins marked by the star were born, great changes happened." In the family and its mission, Father Michael, who now walked without the aid of his cane, dedicated himself to researching these historical connections. "It's not just coincidence," he reflected, studying the ancient documents. Each pair of twins seems to have brought a different expansion of the gift, as if the star mark unfolded into new possibilities. The most surprising discovery came through August. While organizing the family's historical collection, he found a set of ancient sheet music composed by a pair of Montgomery twins in the 19th century. The music, when played, produced extraordinary effects on people, calming pains, stimulating positive memories, facilitating the expression of difficult emotions. "It's more than music," explained little Michael, surprising everyone with his intuitive understanding upon hearing the sheet music played for the first time. It's as if the notes were keys that opened doors inside people. Clara, sitting beside her brother, began moving her hands in the air as if she could see the sound waves. "The colors of the music," she said softly, "are the same colors that people have inside." Sophie quickly began drawing the scene. The children connected to the ancient music, the energy patterns Clara described, the transformations that occurred in the faces of people who listened. Her drawing captured not just the present moment, but seemed to predict future developments, as if art, music, and healing were intertwining in a new form of language. Dr. Miller, who accompanied the development of the educational project, brought an interesting perspective. What you're creating here goes beyond a school or therapeutic center. It's a new paradigm of human development, where sensitivity and artistic expression aren't just extra talents, but fundamental tools for personal evolution. The preparation for the school's inauguration mobilized the entire Montgomery family in unexpected ways. Each member found a unique way to contribute, guided by their specific gifts. Helen, with her heightened sensitivity, coordinated the training of teachers, teaching them to recognize and work with children's different forms of emotional expression. Sophie, now a recognized young artist, developed an innovative curriculum that integrated visual arts with emotional development. Her pilot classes attracted the attention of educators from across the country, fascinated by the way she could use drawing to help children process their experiences and emotions. "Each stroke on the paper is an unspoken word," she explained, during a workshop for new teachers. "Our function is not to interpret, but to create a safe space where these words can finally find their voice." The twins, even so young, became an integral part of the process. Clara, with her natural gift for harmonizing environments, helped define the layout of classrooms. Intuitively, she suggested changes in the organization of spaces that invariably resulted in more welcoming environments conducive to learning. Little Michael, in turn, worked with music therapists to create a musical library, a collection of specific melodies for different times of the school day and different emotional needs. It was impressive to see how such a young child could understand and articulate the connections between sound, emotion, and learning. Martha, in her continuous research in the family archives, made a discovery that shed new light on the project. "The ancient sheet music we found," she explained during a family meeting, "is part of a larger healing system. The 19th century twins didn't just compose music, they created a complete language of healing through art." August, who had become an expert in family history, complimented the discovery. Each generation of star-marked Montgomerys added a layer to this knowledge. Music, art, movement, word, different expressions of the same fundamental gift of understanding and transforming human pain. Father Michael, observing the developments with evident pride, recognized patterns that repeated. It's as if each generation were called to expand the gift in a specific way, responding to the needs of their time. Now, with the school, we're creating a space where all this knowledge can meet and evolve. One afternoon, while final preparations for the inauguration were underway, something extraordinary happened. Clara, playing in the garden with some children who were participating in the pilot project, began organizing colored stones in a circular pattern. At the same time, Michael, sitting at the piano in the music room with the windows open, began playing a melody that seemed to converse with the pattern his sister was creating. Sophie, who observed the scene, began drawing frantically. In her pad, an image emerged that captured not just the present moment, but a kind of map of the future. The Montgomery mansion at the center, and emanating from it, waves of light that connected to other points on the horizon. Other places, where the same type of work would begin to flourish. "It's like a constellation," Helen murmured, observing the drawing. "Each point of light is a new center of healing and transformation." Dr. Miller, who had arrived for a final meeting before the inauguration, smiled when she saw the drawing. "You've built something unique here," she said, "a model that combines education, art, and healing in a way that has never been done before. And most importantly, you've created a space where sensitivity is not seen as weakness, but as the transformative force it truly is." The day of the school's inauguration dawned with a special light, as if the sky itself recognized the importance of the moment. The Montgomery Mansion, once a symbol of isolation and secrets, now opened itself completely to the world. Dozens of families, educators, and representatives of institutions from across the country arrived to witness the birth of something unique. Helen, standing at the top of the main staircase, observed the final preparations with misty eyes. Her womb, which had carried the twins during that first tense arrival at the mansion, now carried a new life, a surprise discovered weeks before, as if the universe wanted to add another chapter to the Montgomery story. Sophie was finalizing the last details of her most ambitious work, a mural that covered the entire main wall of the school's entrance hall. The image showed a different kind of family tree, not just of the Montgomery family, but of all the people who had been touched by their gift over generations. Each branch told a story of transformation. Each leaf shone with the promise of a new beginning. "It's more than a school," she explained to visitors who marveled at the mural. "It's a place where each person can discover their own inner light." The twins, dressed in clothes specially chosen for the occasion, surprised everyone. With an unrehearsed presentation, Clara, with her unique sensitivity to spaces, guided guests through the school's rooms, stopping at specific points where her brother Michael, following an extraordinary musical intuition, played melodies that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "The music is always here," explained little Michael, with the profound simplicity of children. "We just need to learn how to listen." Martha, elegant in her new dress, a gift from the family, conducted smaller groups through the historic area of the mansion, now transformed into a living museum. "Each object here," she explained, "tells a story of pain transformed into beauty, of silence transformed into music." Father Michael, standing beside August in the former office, now a family counseling space, observed old family photographs. "It's strange to think," he commented softly, "how fear can make us lose so much time. But perhaps we needed to go through all this to get here." August, who had found peace in his role as guardian of the family history, nodded. "Each generation carries its own shadows and lights. Our mistake was trying to control the gift instead of allowing it to guide us." Dr. Miller, who had become an integral part of the family, presented the legal and structural aspect of the project to a group of social investors. "The model we've developed here," she explained, "combines traditional education with emotional and artistic development in a completely innovative way. Each child is seen not just as a student, but as a complete being with their own inner colors and melodies." During the official inauguration ceremony, something extraordinary happened. Clara, who was playing near the piano, began organizing colored crystals in a circular pattern on the floor. At the same time, Michael sat at the instrument and began playing a melody that no one had taught him, music that seemed to translate into sounds the pattern his sister was creating. Sophie, capturing the moment in her drawing pad, perceived something beyond the visible. In her drawing, the sound waves emanating from the piano intertwined with the light patterns created by the crystals, forming a web of energy that enveloped all present. It was a visual representation of what everyone could feel, a moment of profound connection and transformation. The months that followed the inauguration brought a series of discoveries and confirmations that validated everything the Montgomery family had intuited about their special gift. The children who attended the school not only progressed in their traditional studies, but flourished in unique and surprising ways. A girl who hadn't spoken for years after a trauma found her voice through painting, her canvases expressing emotions that words couldn't capture. A boy with learning difficulties discovered he could understand complex mathematical concepts when they were translated into musical patterns. Each transformation story was carefully documented, creating a precious collection of knowledge about different ways of learning and healing. Helen, now in the 5th month of her new pregnancy, developed an even more heightened sensitivity. She could perceive the emotional needs of children before they even manifested, allowing preventive interventions that made the learning process smoother and more natural. "It's as if each child had their own frequency," she explained during an orientation session for new teachers. "Our work is not to change that frequency, but to adjust the environment so it can resonate at its best vibration." The twins continued to surprise everyone with their unique development. Clara had begun creating emotional maps of spaces, indicating through drawings and arrangements of objects how each environment could be optimized for different types of activities and emotional states. Michael, in turn, developed a musical repertoire that responded specifically to different therapeutic needs. Sophie, working in close collaboration with researchers from various universities, began systematizing her art therapy methodology. Her drawings weren't just records or artistic expressions, they were powerful therapeutic tools that helped people recognize and process their own emotions. "Each stroke has a purpose," she explained during an international workshop held at the mansion. "We're not just creating images, we're creating bridges between the visible and the invisible, between what can be said and what needs to be felt." Martha, besides her responsibilities as guardian of the family history, began training a new generation of caregivers, sensitive people who could continue the work when she was no longer present. "The gift of the star," she taught, "is not limited to our family. It awakens and nurtures similar gifts in others." Father Michael and August, working together in the administration of the foundation, discovered that their different perspectives complemented each other perfectly. Michael's sensitive vision balanced with August's practical sense, creating a management that was both efficient and deeply human. One afternoon, while the family gathered for a moment of rest in the garden, Clara suddenly stopped her play and looked at Helen's belly. With the characteristic simplicity of children, she announced, "It's a girl. She'll be like Aunt Sophie. She'll see things that others don't see." Michael, sitting at the grand piano that had been installed in the winter garden, began playing a new melody, soft, ethereal, like a lullaby not yet born. Sophie, capturing the moment in her drawing pad, created an image that showed not just the present, but also a glimpse of the future. The new child, still in the womb, already surrounded by an aura of colors and shapes that suggested a new unfolding of the family's gift. The first year of the school was coming to an end when Helen went into labor. It was a special night. The sky was particularly starry, and a soft melody echoed through the mansion, played spontaneously by little Michael on the piano in the music room. Clara, sitting beside her brother, arranged crystals in patterns that seemed to dance with the musical notes. Sophie, who didn't leave her sister's side, drew incessantly. Her drawings captured not just the present moment, but seemed to predict the moments that were to come. In her pages, the new child appeared surrounded by an aura of colors never before seen in her works. "She's going to be different," Sophie whispered to Martha, who prepared hot towels and medicinal teas. "Her gift will unite all of ours." The housekeeper, now a grandmother to the whole family, smiled with wisdom. "Each generation brings something new," she replied, arranging Helen's pillows. "That's how the gift grows and transforms." The birth was tranquil, cradled by the soft music that continued flowing from the piano. When little Aurora, a name chosen for her arrival at dawn, opened her eyes for the first time, all those present felt a wave of gentle energy course through the mansion. The plants in the winter garden bloomed out of season, and the crystals Clara had arranged emitted a soft glow. Father Michael, observing his new daughter in Helen's arms, noticed something extraordinary. Aurora's star mark was different. Instead of appearing in a single place, small star-shaped points formed a delicate constellation along her back. "It's as if she carries all the gifts," August murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "Music, art, healing, sensitivity." The following months brought surprising revelations. Aurora grew, demonstrating a unique sensitivity that seemed to combine the gifts of the entire family. When she cried, Michael would play piano and Clara would arrange her crystals, creating a harmony that calmed not just the baby, but everyone around. When she smiled, the plants in the garden seemed to grow more vigorously, and Sophie's drawings gained more vibrant colors. The school, now internationally recognized, continued to evolve. Educators and therapists from various countries visited the mansion, seeking to understand the unique methodology that integrated education, art, and emotional healing. Each visitor left transformed, taking with them not just technical knowledge, but a new understanding of the power of sensitivity. On a significant afternoon, while the family gathered in the garden to celebrate Aurora's first smile, something extraordinary happened. The little one, lying in her cradle under the soft light of evening, raised her tiny hands to the sky. At the same instant, all of the family's gifts seemed to awaken simultaneously. Michael began playing a new melody on the portable piano. Clara saw light patterns never before perceived, and Sophie began drawing with renewed intensity. "It's as if she were a catalyst," Helen explained to the researchers documenting the child's development. "Aurora doesn't just possess her own gift, she has the ability to amplify and harmonize the gifts of others." Martha, consulting the family's ancient diaries, found references to an old prophecy. "A time will come when all stars will align in a single constellation, and the gifts previously separate will flow like a river of light." Time passed, and the Montgomery mansion flourished as never before. The school was no longer just an educational institution, but a transformation center that radiated light far beyond its walls. Families from all corners of the world sought that space where sensitivity was cultivated as a precious gift, not as a weakness to be overcome. Aurora, now 3 years old, grew as a living synthesis of all the family's gifts. Her presence had an extraordinary effect on everyone around her. When she played with the twins, their games transformed into spontaneous healing sessions. Clara organized harmonic spaces with even greater precision, while Michael created melodies that seemed to touch the very essence of emotions. Sophie, observing her niece's development, produced a series of works that captured this new phase of the family. Her drawings, now exhibited in galleries around the world, showed not just people and places, but the intricate webs of energy and emotion that connected all beings. "Art is not just expression," she explained in her increasingly popular lectures. "It's a universal language that allows us to see beyond appearances, touch the untouchable, express the inexpressible." Helen, balancing her role as school director with motherhood, developed an innovative program that was being adapted by institutions in various countries. "What we discovered here," she shared at international conferences, "is that each person carries a unique light. Our function is not to standardize these lights, but to create spaces where they can shine in their fullness." Father Michael and August, working in harmony, expanded the Morning Star Foundation to include research and training centers in various cities. The model they developed combined the best of efficient management with a deep understanding of human sensitivity. Martha, though quite elderly now, continued to be the heart of the mansion. Her stories, now recorded in books and documentaries, inspired people around the world to recognize and value their own sensitivity. On a special night, during the celebration of the 10th anniversary of Helen's arrival at the mansion, the family gathered in the garden. Aurora, playing with Clara's crystals, created a pattern that exactly reflected the configuration of stars in the sky. Michael, at the piano, began playing a melody that seemed to translate the dance of constellations into music. Sophie, capturing the moment in her drawing pad, created an image that summarized the family's entire journey. The mansion at the center, no longer as a physical structure, but as a beacon of light that connected to countless bright points scattered throughout the world. Other centers where the same work of transformation was flourishing. "Look," Aurora said, her clear voice carrying a wisdom beyond her years. "Other stars are dancing," and they truly were, not just in the sky but in each person present. The star mark, once a symbol of isolation and secrets, now shone as a reminder of the transformative power of sensitivity, love, and understanding. The Haute. Montgomery Mansion, which was once a stage for pain and separation, had transformed into a beacon of hope and healing. Its doors, now always open, invited everyone to discover their own inner light, their own music, their own art. And so, under the starry sky, as Aurora laughed and played, as the twins created their unique magic, as Sophie, Drew, and Helen watched, with misty eyes, the ancient prophecy was fulfilled. All the stars had aligned,